When we are talking of land, it is the solid, dry surface of the earth that is not covered by water. That is what land is. Land fall under a higher category of classification called real estate. And what is real estate? Real estate in simple terms is land and anything that is found on that land. So house is real estate, shops are real estate, trees are real estate. Anything that is found on land that is immovable is what we call real estate or immobilier in French. Regarding the classification of land, there are different types of land. We can classify land according to the purpose for which the land is used, or we can classify land according to the ownership of the land. When we are talking about land according to the purpose, we can have residential land, which are land that are meant for housing, for residential purposes, right? We can also have commercial land, which are land that are meant for business purposes, offices, hotel, restaurants, and many other business or commercial activities. We can also have agricultural land, which is a type of land that are used for crop production, rearing of animals, and many other agricultural practices. We can also have industrial land, which are land that are meant for industrial purposes, like constructions of factories, warehouses, and many other industrial purposes. We also have restricted land, which are meant for government purposes, like military camps and all this kind of thing, which are highly restricted from the public, right? These are the various type of land that we can have according to the purpose. So a land that is meant for building might not necessarily be used for construction. In Cameroon, there is what they call zoning. Zoning is just a process whereby government allocate a particular purpose to a piece of land. So the government can say that this piece of land here can only be used for construction. You cannot use this for industrial purposes. You cannot use it maybe for commercial purposes. You cannot use this for agricultural purposes. So there are land that are zoned. And the government can also say this piece of land here is meant for agricultural purposes. You cannot use this for building construction. You cannot use this for commercial purposes. If you want to use this land, it is only for agricultural purposes. So whenever you want to buy a piece of land, it's always good to know if there is zoning that exists on that land. What can I do with this land? Can I build on this land? Can I maybe farm on this land? Can I do business on this land? Because when the government zone a particular piece of land, if you walk against the zoning criteria, they can restrict that land, or they can seize that piece of land from you, or they can stop you from doing whatsoever thing you want to do with the land. So whenever you want to buy a land, find out and see if the purpose for which you want to use the land is permitted by the state, is permitted by the law. If it is not permitted, then better not buy that piece of land than to buy a piece of land maybe for construction, and when you want to construct, the government say no, you cannot construct in this area because it is zoned for industrial purposes. You know, industrial zone, depending on the kind of activity that is being done on that land, there are certain toxic products that some industrial manufacturing company produces, or waste that comes out from machines, and some of those wastes are toxic to human beings. So the government will not want anybody to live near the area where this kind of activity is. They can contaminate the soil, they can contaminate water, they can even contaminate the air. So it is always very important to know if there is zoning on a land before you go forward and buy it. If there is no zoning on the land, then you by analyzing yourself, you can see, depending on the area where you are, and determine if what you want to do with that land will match that area. Now, we also said that when it comes to land classification, we can classify land by ownership. Now, when it comes to the classification of land by ownership, we have private lands, which are land that are owned by individuals, and this land has title, they have land certificate, and it is an individual or an organization that has this piece of land, and they have all the legal capacity or the legal right to use that land, transfer that land, or manage that land in any way that is permitted by the law. Never step on a private land, because when you step on a private land without the permission of the owner, that person can file a complaint against you, and you are going to pay for venturing on somebody's land without their permission. Now, we also have customary or family land. Customary or family lands are land that belongs to a community or maybe to a family. Like we can come in the city of Boya, we go maybe in the community of Bokwango. We see that there is a particular land that belongs to that community. It does not belong maybe to an individual, but it belongs to the community and is being managed by the chief of the community and the various notables or leaders in that particular community. It belongs to them. So it is the chief and the leader of that community that has total power over that land, and that can either decide to sell that land or exploit that land in whatsoever way. There are also family lands. Now, family lands are lands that belongs to a family. It can either be by birth, it can either be by heritage, or by whatsoever means, right? You will go in some places that are going to tell you that this land belongs to this family, it belongs to that family. Those are lands that exist in Cameroon. And another type of land that exists in Cameroon are state land. These are land that belongs to the government and have been reserved for government purposes, projects like schools, universities, hospitals, parks, and many other things that the government wants to do with it. Now, when you want to buy land, one of the safest land to buy is a private land, because with that land, you have legal security at the highest level on that land. But a customary land is a land that does not have a land title, but which belongs only to the community. It is just being known communally, right? But it does not have a title which proves supreme ownership over a particular piece of land. Never buy a land that belongs to the state, right? Because state land are really restricted land. Never buy them unless the government itself send out a notice that they are selling their land. Then in that case, you can buy it.